to Wine and Spirits, where the tea is hot, the receipts are kept, and the spirits are occasionally alcoholic. I'm Maya Johnson.
And I am Gianni Olamide. And today we are diving into some messy corners of TikTok and talking trauma. And it's about gentle parenting. Is it revolution or regression? Let's get into it.
All right,
So,
so what's the wine, right? So you see gentle parenting videos going viral. You have like your child led conversations, no yelling, calm corrections. And so the critique is some people say that it's too soft for black kids in basically in today's world. The world is too rough. Um, the stats say that over 70% of black parents report being spanked as kids, but fewer than that want to continue the cycle, right? And so unfortunately, when we have this conversation, we have to talk about it from like the intersection of both love and survival. So like what's your take on gentle parenting? What do you think gentle parenting is, right? If somebody asked you to define gentle parenting, what would you say it is?
uh, I think it is using trauma informed methods to actually try to connect with your child, communicate, and raise a healthy, independent adult. Right. So when I think about gentle parenting, period, in the black
Hmm.
community, a lot of us do what was done to us, not necessarily what we feel is the right thing to do.
Yep.
The other part is a lot of us don't actually learn about the child development to inform our parenting, right? And so the things that would allow us to be gentle or very frankly to not put our hands on our kids, to give them autonomy and agency of
Hmm.
body
Yeah.
requires that we got to have some emotional regulation. And so I think that survival factor sometimes impedes on us being able to self-regulate in ways that we move in love and gentleness. But there's still a necessary balance of discipline, and I don't think that you have to be abusive to be a disciplinarian.
I agree, but I also think like you said, it's pretty much a copy and paste method when it comes to parenting. People just do what's been done to them. I don't think people are actively involved in the parenting process in general. And then I think people confuse things like permissive parenting or child led parenting with with conscious or gentle parenting, right? I think but because we're not studying and we're not doing the works, right, we think not disciplining our child is gentle parenting, where or permissive parenting, which really ain't parenting at all, if you ask me. I think understanding what it really is important, and then not trying to approach every kid with a one size fits all, right? And it's frustrating when you have to like argue with people, unfortunately, when they're like, oh, well, I got spanked and I'm fine. You're not fine though. Most of us need therapy. You can't, you know what I'm saying, you can't build and foster healthy relationships. Not even friendships. You and your parents still don't even have a balanced relationship as adults. There's trauma there. And that's not to say that your parents were necessarily bad people for disciplining you in the ways that they knew how. However, though, at some point as adults and as parents ourselves, we have to like take a critical look at the things that we experience and the things that we're perpetuating in the name of discipline, basically. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of our tactics, unfortunately, come from slavery. I got a book.
Oh, I'm about to say you went there because it was show coming.
I got a book. It's probably backwards, but it's called "Spare the Kids: Why Whooping Children Won't Save Black America," and it's by a black woman named Stacey Patton. And it's a quote from Mark Lamont Hill on here. Get
Mm.
this book, y'all. But I do think we got to stop putting our hands on our kids. Just in general, we got to stop putting our hands on our kids. And I think because what it teaches your children, unfortunately, is that when you don't get the results that you want from somebody, you put your hands on them. You know what I'm saying? It's my son in the background, y'all. But yeah, and it's sending across the wrong message, if you ask me, right? And I think we have to do better and be more intentional with everything, including our parenting.
Absolutely. You mentioned conscious parenting, and I wanted to note that there's a difference between gentle parenting and conscious parenting. And gentle parenting is more along the lines of making sure that you use empathy and understanding when it comes to your child. But conscious parenting adds another layer of self-awareness and
Mm-hmm.
intentionality
Yep.
in your style and your teaching, right? In terms of producing particular outcomes. And we don't talk a lot about conscious parenting in our
At
community.
all.
And so for me, I just wanted to raise the difference up so that parents understand that when we talk about these different styles, they are also a mirror of your own self development, right? And so we have to do our work as parents. Otherwise, we are gonna fail our kids.
For sure. And some of us are, you know what I'm saying? Like you have college students that can't even read right now. Like we are failing our kids to a degree. Just like the whole, I hate using the word YN because I can say the word, right? However, a rise in that particular like culture and putting those labels on our children, you know what I'm saying? I think not only that, but just like violence. Part of it is for sure an American problem, a very, very American problem. And I think we lost the plot when we started preparing our children for the world instead of preparing the world for our children.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? I think that's where we lost the plot. I think when the world is cruel, and certain systems are in place that disenfranchise, that oppress, why would you want to mold your child to that? Because unfortunately, though the attributes of the system are going to be the attributes that you end up instilling in your child in order for them to quote unquote be successful in it, right? But you want your kids to be in the world and not necessarily of it, right? Um, when I do think we should probably be a little bit more proactive in shaping the environments that our children grow up in, as much as we can, right? That means having pretty much a safe space at home. And what a lot of parents don't want to admit is that a lot of your kids don't trust you. You know what I'm saying? Not only that, a lot of your kids don't like you and they don't want to be like you. And I think that's where the disconnect comes from, right? Because most parents assume that they're doing a good job because their kid is either still free and graduated from high school, you know what I'm saying? Or they have a job, or like the basic things of kind of taking care of themselves. But I think they're not in a position to even be able to conscious parent or a gentle parent because their child doesn't trust them enough to fully be open or honest with them. So both of y'all are like moving from a space to where nobody, like both of y'all are 1 foot in 1 foot out of this parent child relationship. You know what I'm saying? And you're leaving your child susceptible to the influences of the world because there's still a gap there.
yeah. But you raise it. So you're talking about the system, and what it makes me think about is how most people who are affected by the system have no understanding that there are things that are greater at work in place that are affecting them, right? There's a lot of people who still feel like, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Oh, this is there's something that you as an individual can do different. And I feel like that in a lot of ways impedes on our ability to work together around this whole survival thing,
For
right? Because
sure.
if it's all my responsibility and I got to figure it out, the time that it take me to figure it out is also time I ain't got for my babies. It's
For
time that
sure.
I don't have to quote unquote do the work. It's time that, especially if I still got to figure out how to get this money so I can feed and house and make sure that they got the basic bare necessities.
Yeah.
So for me, I hope parents are listening to the ways that the only way to be able to beat the system is by collectivity. Period. So find your village, find the people that can help support you. That way you ain't got to struggle. But you're absolutely right when you talk about trust. But the other thing I realize is that a lot of parents don't know their kids. Right? You live in a
Period.
house. I do these things for you. Right? There's this transaction that happens out of responsibility or duty.
Hmm.
But also in terms of the way that I might know my friend or the way that I might know my mate, the ways that I might consider them, I don't extend that consideration to my children,
At
right?
all.
And we've talked about this before. For those of y'all who don't know, me and Maya, we do a lot of living and
Yeah,
talking on social media. So make
for
sure you
sure.
tapped in and you follow our socials so that you don't miss those either. Um, but that the transaction value of what adults get from children is not necessarily there. So the ways that we
Yeah.
engage them is not as intentional as it is from folk we feel like we can get something out of, right?
Period.
And so there's also this healing function that has to happen, because a lot of times our folks did that to us. I think about
Mm-hmm.
my father who had his own business, and when it was time for me to work, who he didn't want to pay, right? You're not finna
Yeah, you
exploit
want
my
that free
labor,
labor
I
because
mean.
that's what children represent. That's what children represent. We gotta talk about that in another episode. But yeah, because children are essentially free labor. But not only, but that's only once they get to a certain age, right? Like you said, it's about extracting value. And unfortunately, this is why so much of the conversation that we have surrounds romantic relationships, because people, there's an immediate feedback loop. I do a good thing, I get hugs and kisses, I get affection. You know what I'm saying? I please this person in this way. I get money, I get gifts, I get the things, I get to sleep with this person, right? I get all the warm fuzzies. I even might have somebody to split some bills with, or whatever the case may be. That relationship does not exist for children. You have somebody in your house, right? Or that needs your resources to survive, and you essentially don't get anything back because they're not even obligated to love you, right? Eventually that happens, but in the beginning it's just an attachment. You take a newborn, yeah, there are certain pheromones, whatever, but you give it a couple of months and sit it in the right person's hands, the child will have affinity for whoever has the resources, you know what I'm saying? And so, like, you don't really get any rewards, or there's not an immediate feedback loop, and you really don't know how good of a job or bad of a job you've done until
Till
that
later.
person hit the real world type time, you know
Till
what I'm
later.
saying? You don't know till almost 2 decades later before you actually get to see the results of your actions, right? That you get the reap what you have sown this whole time. And so I get why, because there is no immediate feedback, there's no sense of urgency, and it's almost like out of sight, out of mind with kids. I'm gonna feed you because I have to. That's a daily need, right? I'm gonna feed you. I'm gonna put clothes on you. Most people don't even like. If you ask the average parent when the last time they let their kid get the aux cord, or just simple stuff, look, my son went through a whole EDM phase, and we had to rock out through that joint. I let him play what he want to play. You know what I'm saying? He listened to
Dang.
techno, house, all the things, and I just let him do it. You know what I'm saying? And we vibed out together because I took interest in the things that were important to him. So
Absolutely. But is it really realistic when you and this might be a sip or spit moment, right? But when you
okay.
stressed, broke, raising kids in a hostile system, overwhelmed, ain't got what you need, that you can give your kids what they need as a parent.
I feel you, but at this point, we can't keep using that as an excuse to not like evolve, right? Um, our kids deserve better than like fear based and oppression based parenting. They
Mm-hmm.
deserve active parents. They deserve, parents who are present. And the only way we can do that is by being more intentional. We got to do the work, right? We buy books, we take classes, you know what I'm saying? We absorb all the TikToks with dating advice and whatever the case may be, right? We absorb media when it comes to the things that we feel like are important about us, that things that are important to us, right? We should be doing the same thing as parents, right? Not only should we be consuming content that's going to make us better parents or make us more conscious as parents, but we should also be listening to our kids. We should be actually spending quality time getting to know our children as people so we can better give them the tools that they need specifically, you know what I'm saying, for us to raise them properly, for them to have the things that will make them become the best version of themselves, and not just try to force a round peg into a square hole and create a bunch of mini me's, right? Your
Ooh,
job
that's
isn't to
good.
create a mini me, it's to have a tailored approach to give that particular child what they need to be the best version of themselves.
That's good. And I think that's really what gives us agency to give our kids what they need, is to not make them such extensions of ourselves that we trying to live vicariously through them.
because that's what most
right?
parents are doing,
Come
unfortunately.
on. But then I think about also, and in ways that we discipline and we quote unquote correct our children,
Yeah,
is not from a place of teaching and learning, but from one of control,
and
right?
frustration. If we
Yep.
keeping it real, frustration and anger too.
Yep. And what you're a free space to release that, right? Which makes me think about the connection that you made to the ways that we discipline our children being related to slavery and
Yep.
corporal punishment, because that's even a conversation now that's coming back. I know down here they talking about it in the schools.
Put your hands on my kid. I'm putting my hands on you.
Where
But once
you said what?
again, like I said, hidden kids just teaches them that when you don't get the result you want, put your hands on people. It is not gonna make things better. And we can have a whole nother conversation about how like modern parenting advice. We talking about like pre 2010, right? Not like ultra modern like right now, because we're having these conversations around gentle parenting and conscious parenting now. However, in the past, like when you had those parenting books that popped up around like the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, those come from, unfortunately, Nazi Germany, right? Like, and I don't think a lot of people actually understand the connection between not only just slavery, right? The idea that children were unpaid labor and the entire purpose of children was just to benefit the state. Those things come from like Nazi experiments. And some of the first gurus when it comes to parenting techniques came from came from Nazi Germany, right? Um, and Hitler sympathizers. So the thing is that like this idea, like what is it, the self-soothing, that's Nazi experimentation stuff. And some parents still doing that, right? Not understanding how harmful that is to a baby's nervous system. There's no such thing as self-soothing, right? A newborn can't self-regulate. Like that's actually cruel. Like,
Yeah,
but
neglect.
so it's so many different historical implications on the way that we raise children, and I don't think we understand how many of them are rooted in trauma, oppression, and dehumanization. It's about breaking a person down, and we want our children to be mindless followers, workers and drones, and so we strip their identity away, and we kill their creativity and do all these things, and then we are in 2025 still perpetuating some of that same foolishness and wondering why the world looks like it does. Corporal punishment ain't gonna hitting your kids is not it's not gonna fix anything.
I think the other thing that I'm thinking about as we're talking about this is our relationship to power, right? And the power that we are able to exercise, quote unquote, over our kids impedes upon the ways that we can help give power to our kids and help shape power within them, right? And these response mechanisms are related to maintaining power over, right? So, of course, I will exercise force.
Pause like 2 seconds. My bad, y'all. I had some technical difficulties. As y'all see, life be lifing around me right now. So we gonna get it together at
And
some
we
point.
ain't
But
gonna
right
pretend
now,
it ain't, y'all, because we know life be lifing for y'all too.
yeah, it's real stuff going on over here at all times. Like I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. This is a safe space for y'all, and I'm
Same.
exposing y'all to my life as well. So I don't know what you missed out on, right? This is when I paused there, but we back, and I do know y'all missed the part about the summer program for kids, right? So tell us
Oh
about what
yeah,
you got going on, and then we'll jump back into.
I was trying to. So when she hit pause, I thought it was still running. So I was on commercial break time. But my cup that I'm sipping from today says, "I want for my sister what I want for myself. I want for my brother what I want for myself." And
Yeah.
this is courtesy of an organization called Boom out of Dallas, Texas. Boom stands for Building Opportunities and Opening Minds. They work with 12 to 17-year olds. And every summer they
Mm-hmm.
have a freedom school, and they call it Freedom Summer. So if you live in the
That's up.
Dallas area, by all means, look up Boom, get your kids connected, and find you some programs wherever you are to make sure that you got a village and some people that can help support you if you're a parent on your journey. Because we can't do this in isolation, y'all. Life really do be
Facts.
lifing out here. And so when we say get what you need, and make sure you got a safe space, you got safe people, you got folk who can support you, do that for
Oh,
sure.
for sure. For sure.
And also, if you got an organization or a program or something that we need to let people know about, shoot it to us. Wine and Spirit Show at gmail.com. We would love to be able to help get the word out to the community.
For sure, for sure. So back to what we was talking about, like we said, the whole corporal punishment, slavery, Nazi Germany experiments, even during slavery, right? You had to kind of keep your kids on a very, very, very short rope, right? On a short leash, because at the end of the day, that was a life or death situation, right? Your kid could be punished, like basically tortured if they didn't fall in line, right? But there's no reason in 2025 we should still be perpetuating the same foolishness, because life doesn't look like that anymore. And I think, unfortunately, we've come so far without ever really getting to see what it looks like to be free and black, like for real, be free, right? Knowing what a free black boy looks like, a free black girl, free black man, free black woman, or whatever the case, right? However you identify, we're inclusive. And so what it really looks like to be free, right? And when I say free, I mean like free from expectations and things like that, because like we said, life be life, and right. So you do want to protect your children, but being their first bully is not the way to do it.
Mm.
It's not the way to do it. It's not the way to do it. So that's kind of where I am. So what I do want to say is like, okay, or what I want to discuss is pop culture, right? So portrayals of parenting in pop culture. Like, what are some of your favorite older examples? And then what about some newer examples from whether it be TV shows, social media, or whatever, of like parenting relationships? Maybe give us a good one and then maybe a bad one.
Well, my mama had me when Cosby was on. I was late getting here because she was in the middle of watching Cosby. And what I can say is they were like a TV ideal, right? Of
Mm,
for me, I didn't grow up in a two-parent household. So the only
me.
idea that I had of what a two-parent household looked like was watching the Cosbys, right?
Hmm.
And I know that that experience is real for a lot of other people. But for me, what I appreciated was there was always a lesson. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to see their personalities as parents. You got to know what they did and actually see the way they created a life for their kids, but also the ways that they engaged with them differently. Right? I think it was four of them: Rudy,
Yep.
Vanessa, Theo. No, three. No, Theo, and who was
It
that?
was,
Sandra, the
yeah.
oldest one.
I says
Yeah,
it was
it
the
was four
oldest,
of them,
yeah.
and all of them were different and were treated different. Right? They all had their
Hmm.
own likes and had the autonomy to be able to go and do their own things, right? And us to be able to see how that played out. All the way
Right.
from when they was doing stuff they ain't had no business doing to
Yeah.
where I'm used to knowing somebody gonna get their ass whooped for this type of behavior where I'm from. But for them
Yeah.
it became a let me show you how this is gonna actually affect
Yeah. Well,
you.
he dropped the old boy off in the hood. That was so
Yes.
funny. He took a good.
It
This
was
is what you want. All right.
yeah,
Because the
so
lesson is more important than like getting your frustration off. What's
yeah.
like a more recent example of like a parenting relationship
Ooh. So I like
that you
Abbott
might like?
Elementary. And what I like about there is you get to see parents from the view of the teachers. Right?
Okay.
The, so
Yeah.
like and I can't everybody loves Chris. Can't remember his name on the show. But
Yeah.
low key dude wanted to be the principal. It was a whole bunch of things that happened. But one of the parents in his class, he trying to talk to the parent about her son and she trying to holler at him, right? He's like, ma'am. But
Yeah.
also, her interest in him is what gets her to finally come to
And
start
be
showing up
active.
at the PT.
Mhm.
Come on, you know what I'm
Yeah, to
saying?
be present
And
for that.
so,
Yeah. Like my daddy be saying, let that be the reason. You know what I'm
period.
saying? Let that be the reason.
And so
Another
he,
interesting thing in Abbott Elementary, Janine's relationship with her own mother.
mm,
Um, that is a little bit more realistic for me, right? To show kind of a negative example, but not necessarily bad, right? So her mother pretty much only around when she wants something. You know what I'm saying? Janine and her sister practically kind of had to raise themselves a little bit because they have an irresponsible mother. And so because of that, there's like a disconnect between her and her sister, and then both of them and their mom. And the mom show up, and she wanted money. Pay this for me. Give me. I need a new phone. I need this. I need that. And it's like, unfortunately, that's the thing. What does it look like to be the only child, like with your life somewhat together, or be the stable one in your family, when your parent isn't even the stable one? You know what I'm saying? I think that parenting relationship was very, very interesting. And I do want to point out another bad example. As an elder millennial, right? Or somewhere close to the end, you know what I'm saying? We in the middle. But Moisha was one of my favorite shows, and I recently rewatched the whole thing. Love Moisha, and I'm a Brandy stan. Love the vocal Bible down, right?
Baby,
However, 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 I think her father, Frank, was a terrible father. He was a terrible father. But then Dee, unfortunately, as an educator, was the better of the parents, and she's the stepmom. And then you have to see, like, you have this man who's he was a single father for a while because his ex-wife has passed, and he has his own struggles. Still a terrible father, kind of a horrible man a little bit, but we see just even the idea of him being a single father was something relatively new. You know what I'm saying? And so now he's getting married, and we're looking at this step-parent dynamic and how that affects, having a teenage girl and a young boy. And then the whole Frank hiding the child, and how you could have just had a lot of those things could have been solved with just a conversation. Mm-hmm. And then even then with him being a salesman, and when Moisha wanted a car, it's like, he wants to buy her the car that he wants her to have and not give her any like say so or autonomy. It's like she earned the thing, but a lot of parents want to give you what they want you to have. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the, I will say, like, even with my own mom, she gave me a choice when it was time for me to get a car. She didn't want to get me a car to begin with, but my grandfather was like, absolutely not. So not to toot my own horn or nothing, but I actually got accepted into Ivy League school, right? I didn't go. I went to FAMU instead and partied and flunked out, right? However, though, I just wrapped up my 3rd degree, so I'm good now. But and working on my 2nd master's now. So I will say this though, when it came, so because of my achievements, my grandfather was like, you need to do something for her. She's done the things, right? And so my mom decided, she got me like a Honda. I didn't get no say so. And my grandfather was like, you're not finna send her all the way to Florida, you know what I'm saying, in a car with 150,000 miles on it. So he was like, I'll get her one if you're not gonna do it. So she gets me a new car. But she gave me a choice between two. Because she knew, like, at every corner, my grandfather is there with we got to do better than that. We got to do better than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so while I couldn't just go drive a Mercedes off the lot, it's like, hey, here's the budget. Here's what I'm looking at. Pick one of these. And I'm just like, okay, boom. And I had my little red Pontiac Vibe with the rims on it. And I was thugging with that joint for a little bit. I was all in them Little Rock streets. However, though, just being able to have some semblance of a choice. And I think a lot of Black parents remove our ability to choose because they think we can't handle things. But in my mind, if you've done your job as a parent, there are age appropriate ways to discuss a number of things with your children. I taught my own son about the basics of like sex when he was like 5-6 years old, right? Only because I'm sending him to school, right? It's not just enough for him to know the scientific names for his body parts, right? Because you're not gonna give it no cute name and touch on him and think he not gonna know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so it's having those hard and often uncomfortable conversations from a very young age. I knew when I sent him to school, he was equipped to come back and tell me accurately about his own experiences. But a lot of parents, oh, they're too young. They don't need to know that, or they don't, or just whatever. You know what I'm saying? And I think I'm not going to say we coddle our children, but we hinder them and we stifle their development by not giving them certain things. I remember having a back and forth. Oh, and I want your opinion on this actually. I remember having a back and forth um about the like sex ed in schools and age appropriate sex ed in elementary school. And people were angry in my comments when I was like, I absolutely 1000% support it. Because there is a 6, 7 year old, probably even an 8, 9 year old right now being raised by their grandma, their auntie, or even their mama, still calling their vagina a pocketbook. You know what I'm saying? And so you're putting that child at a disadvantage because unfortunately it's a slippery slope, but all parents aren't necessarily equipped or comfortable sometimes. It's just awkward sometimes with having certain conversations with their children. And I do think a kindergarten teacher teaching children the appropriate names for their body parts is age appropriate sex ed, and I'm totally okay with that.
No,
And
I agree with
what
that.
are your thoughts on it?
No, I agree with that. Um, I think people are not aware of how young children start to question their own development. Um,
But how are they not though? Because you got people you was in elementary school hunching your friends and sometimes your cousins. So like no, I'm just saying,
but
and
we don't
I'm
talk
just
about
keeping it
that,
above, right?
right? So then when it come to my child, right? Then you're exposing them too young or sexualizing things before when it's just like no, I'm not sexualizing a child by making sure that they understand their body
Hmm.
parts, or even I would even say their predispositions to certain behaviors, right? Because you start seeing
Literally,
children explore gender roles at ages 4 and 5,
for
right?
sure.
When the kids are playing house, you always had the girls that was playing daddy. Okay, like
Yeah.
let's have the conversation.
Hey.
And
Yeah.
so, I think because a lot of adults have not gotten to a space where they are comfortable with themselves, with their sexuality, with their understanding of biology, with their
Mhm.
understanding of how anatomy works, development works, all these
Yeah.
things, right? So I don't want you teaching my child something that I can't teach my child. I don't want my
Yeah.
baby coming asking me questions that I'm not equipped to answer. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that back to this fear-based parenting, right?
Yeah.
Education will dispel a lot of problems that we have. But because you mentioned Janine, when Janine mama wasn't there, you think about her relationship with Cheryl Lee Ralph and how she
Yes.
made her a mama, right?
Yes.
We start looking for those answers in places that we know that there's an adult that we can trust that
Yep.
will give them to us, and oftentimes they're not the parents of our children, right? And that's back to why the village is important, because I got kids that'll come to me and talk to me about things they won't talk to their parents about. Now once you come
Hmm.
and talk to me, now I gotta talk to your mama or your daddy, right?
That's a
but
very
but
unfortunately
if
being
you're
queer,
you're
that's a
Moisha's
very
dad, then we're just glad you showed up.
yeah. But like this as a queer person, that's a very interesting thing. I actually had a person ain't my friend, but a friend of the family, right? Had a teenage daughter who was feeling like she might be queer, right?
Mm.
And she reached out to me. And the advice I gave, because she had to be like 17, 18 at the time. Um, and I probably maybe 10, 15 years older than her. So I wasn't like super old, right? Um, but the advice I gave her when she came to me was like, um, you know, that's something that's kind of important. However, though, if that's not something you're sure you want, don't treat that like a phase or a trend, right? Make sure that that's something that you genuinely align with before you jump out there. And if you do decide that that's something like that, that's actually who you are. Because it's one thing to question yourself, right? And be like, is this a thing that I'm looking for? You can ask yourself those questions and figure out how you identify and then what you're attracted to without jumping in the pool. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to jump in the pool. And so I'm like, hey, avoid jumping in the pool if you can avoid jumping in the pool and figure out your feelings because that, being from Little Rock, Arkansas, and me knowing what your family is like, that could make life harder for you. So make sure that's something you really, really want before you add unnecessary struggles to your life. Girl, her mama found out about that conversation. I'm talking about block me, made her block me, messaged me and was like, don't talk to my kid. And I was like, I literally didn't say, look, I thought I gave some solid advice. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, I bring that up because we talk about, like, finding these figures, right? Now you have cut your child off from a potentially safe adult, if that makes sense. And she's still going to look for that information somewhere else. You just blocked her off from me, who was going to look out for your kid, because, you know what I'm saying, I've known this person. We weren't super close, but friends of the family, right? So I've known your mom and some others since I was small. So it's like, I would have looked out for you. And all she did was basically essentially force her daughter to go find information in places that might not be safe for her. Because, like you said, that fear-based parenting. And I think, like you said, the village is important, but the village can't only be comprised of people who look and think like you. Because when you have a child in a situation like that, if your child comes to you today and it's like, you know what? I think, you know what I'm saying, I might be gay, or I might be bi or lesbian or whatever. I might be non-binary. Is there a safe adult in your life who you would actually trust to ensure that your child still don't hop off in another community and then go get used, abused, or whatever over there?
Right.
What resources do you have? You know what I'm saying? If all your friends are, these church going Christians and people who are essentially going to cast the same judgment on your child as you do, like, where does that leave the kid? You know what I'm saying? What does your village actually look like? And is there variety? Do you have enough resources to handle different situations in case your kid is not like you? You know what I'm saying? Because they're going to go looking. They're going to go looking.
Yep.
And
And
you want them to come
that
across somebody
space.
safe.
That's what I'm about to say. Safety is such a big thing, right? Because also, if I don't have safety at home, right? How then do I define safety in
Yep.
my interactions, in the way that I seek people out, and in the things that I accept for myself, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we internalize the behavior that we I don't even want to say behavior, the treatment that we experience from those
Yeah.
that we love as right behavior, even
Yep.
when it's not, right? Especially when it's attached to the hierarchical titles, right? My mother, my father, my
Yep.
my my grandparents, or uncles, aunts, all the things. But that's why I say, when young people have those conversations with us, it creates a necessity to have conversations with those parents, because also, as somebody who your child sees as safe, how do I help you be accountable for what type of environment that you are creating, right? Like, I've had a parent call me and say, oh, I've had my kids that jumped on me and I don't know what's they got in them. And I'm like, I know your kid. I know your babies. Your babies
Yeah.
ain't gonna just do that for no reason. So
Period.
tell me the rest of the story, right? Tell
Yep.
me where you come in at. What are the,
Yep.
you know what I'm saying? And then you find out that the kids are, I didn't try to tell her about abuse, and she has corroborated it, or
Mhm.
left the space continually unsafe, or
Yep.
a variety of things. And it's, hey, you got to fix this. Otherwise, I'm
Yeah.
about to intercede, or potentially what you would call overstep boundaries. But
Yeah.
how far are we willing to
It's about
go
to get
to keep
real.
these kids safe? And for me,
Mhm.
I think that it really comes down to, what do we want to produce in them? What do we want to create in our kids? And if we really want self-aware, critical thinking, independent adults, right? Children who become those type of
Mhm.
adults, then we have to give them agency to be able to explore themselves. And
Yeah.
our children don't get safe environments to explore, especially our boys, because they get railroaded into a
Yeah.
very specific idea of
Yeah.
masculinity from very, very young. Our
And it's
girls get
hard
a little
fighting it
bit more
too. It's
space,
hard.
but not enough.
Yeah. It's hard. As a mother of a son, is everybody put more expectations on I guess things like around masculinity and other stuff, then I just want my son to be happy, healthy, and be somebody he could be proud of. You know what I'm saying? But that's not the black community. Unfortunately, has a very narrow definition of what a man is, and it's really hard to maneuver. Like, this is probably one of the times, I hate you siding with a man, right? Or taking up for a man. I do not like defending men. However, I do think, unfortunately, this is one of those areas where black men legitimately have it rough, and I would not want to be one, because it is so difficult to be a black man, because everybody expects you to perform your masculinity in a very, very specific way, and you don't have the freedom to really express yourself or to be different, because it's even like the whole, what is it, is he gay or does he just like white women, like on some, it's you literally can, and then even then it's only two boxes you can go into if you don't behave, unfortunately, like a stereotypical black man, a stereotypical black boy. And then to take it even further, like, getting a diagnosis, or if you're dealing with, I don't know, mental health issues, or getting diagnosis for things like ADD, ADHD, autism, whatever the case may be, if you're not a stereotypical black boy, it's harder for you to get a diagnosis, especially if you're, what I'm saying, a little bit less on the hyper masculine scale and all these other things, and people just assume, oh, you're just one of the good ones, nothing's wrong with you type time. And so, like, it's especially when, like, the traits you're displaying aren't like the aggression and the other things typically ascribed to, like, to black males. It's harder for you to even get help type, like, on some, you can't but unfortunately, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, I do sympathize, and there's a certain empathy that I have when it comes to black men in that box that they're in, that they're forced into. But you know what I'm saying, I would be remiss to not say that they don't paint themselves in a corner,
Mm.
because the same harmful things, and stereotypes or expectations, labels, and things that were forced on you in your childhood that you knew you didn't like, and you remember how they made you feel when you were younger, for you to grow up and then say, you know what I'm gonna do? Exactly all the things that bothered and hurt me as a kid to other black boys is insane to me. You know what I'm saying? It's insane. And so black men do paint themselves in a corner, calling everything gay, like, and just because it's not just women who call me and sassy for wanting to order, a Bahama Mama or a fucking Mai Tai. It's not just black women solely perpetuating these things. Black men do it to themselves. You dress a certain way. If you, I don't know, like crop tops. I like men in crop tops, right? Especially, the football players from the 80s. That shit used to be hot to me.
I actually love to see a man that expresses himself with painting his fingernails.
I
Like,
like that type of stuff. Like, on some,
and I'm like, oh no, I love that. Let me
I
see
love
it.
it. But you have to understand, like, even still, women might like it, but then he won't be accepted amongst his peer group.
That's it.
So then what?
But where is the community of men that says no? You can still do all these things and absolutely be heterosexual, and it takes absolutely nothing away from your masculinity.
They don't exist. And if they do, unfortunately, it's normally only the queer ones. And because of that, the message don't hit home the same. It's like you're only saying that because you're gay. Us having this conversation saying we think certain things in men are attractive is not going to hit the same because of who we are.
I get that, but also the men who fit this description oftentimes end up dating outside of the race. I mean, and that's
Like I
really
said,
more.
is he gay or does he just like white women? Because, and I'm going to tell you why I think that is, right? Not to get too far off topic, but I think it's all black boy behavior, right? So white women and other races of women don't get the script on what black masculinity is supposed to be like. They don't get the script. So because of that, they see a black man with his nails painted, or who dresses a certain way, who's into a certain type of music, has a certain aesthetic, whatever the case may be. To them, that has nothing to do with his masculinity nor his blackness. That's just what he does. And so, unfortunately, the snow bunny or whoever or the non-black woman is going to be a little bit more accepting, only because as a black woman, if I date a guy, and this is somebody who's attracted to me and who can wear crop tops, or you know what I'm saying, who paint their nails or do alternative things, I'm actually attracted to that type of stuff, right? I like manly men too. Now, don't get me wrong, I like them who go noodling and shit. I like that, but that's catching a catfish with your hands if you're not country. Um, so, but so I like different things in men, right? I like men. I think men are attractive. It
Same.
is what it is. Some of y'all
They're
suck
very
a little bit,
listen.
but
They are
men,
fine
men, yeah,
specimens.
yeah, yeah. You know what I'm saying? The universe did they big one.
This
But
big one.
anyway, so with as a black woman though, if I take a man, you know what I'm saying, in a crop top with a chain on his jeans and his nails painted to my family, they no. And it's I know how the men in my family are gonna treat him. And not only that, if I do date him anyway and my family decides to accept him into the fold, right? Um what happens when we move through the world as a couple? How safe am I with him for real?
Mm.
How safe am I? You know, like let's keep it a buck. How safe am I if I'm with him? Who's gonna take him seriously, right? And understanding how toxic culture can be sometimes, who's to say that there aren't gonna be men who wanna either pick a fight or attempt to talk to me just to,
To test his
you know what I'm
masculinity.
saying? Because I've definitely had that happen. Like, because men unfortunately do man things, and even being in relationships with women, it doesn't happen as much nowadays because I don't be certain places. But you know what I'm saying, throughout my relationship, you know how many times I've been at the club and a dude to see me with the person I'm with and still try to holler at one and or both of us and don't care. You know what I'm saying? Disrespectful as shit because they don't see your partner as a threat of any kind, right? And so that would be a similar scenario if I'm dating an alternative black man. We just got to keep it above. How much is he going to be respected? And what does that do for my safety as a woman?
Yeah, no, I get that part too. Which is why most women like a man's man, because then they don't have to quote unquote
Yeah.
worry about that factor. Um,
Yeah. We got to stop letting the world put us in that box too.
yeah, I'm about to say,
Go
what
give a
I've
nurse some
seen though
ass
is this,
today.
this, these youngins are defying the stereotypes though. I was about to
Yeah.
say, and
Yeah.
not only do they walk outside like that, but they also anime lovers, jujitsu fighting, all
Period.
the
Love it.
things. You know what I'm
Love
saying? So
it.
I have hope that they will continue to bust down the barriers. So we're gonna sip to self awareness. We're gonna spit the stereotypes and the perfection and the judgments. And
Yeah.
know that parenting is not a one size fits all because people are not one size fits all. And it's
Period.
okay for us to be who we are. Because harming each other is not healing either.
Period. Period. So now, since we getting close to the end here, this our teachable toast. Now I don't got my drink with me right now. 'Cause I need some water. I had some. I was sipping on some Basil Hayden, some good old whiskey, and yeah, I need to hydrate. Plus today's a workout day. But so one of the things that we need to look at, like as a framework for being better moving forward, is reparenting while parenting, right? So it's basically like breaking cycles while holding space for grace, right? Because we got to give ourselves grace, because we have things to unpack, unlearn, the whole nine, right? And then we also need to start holding space and creating space for our children and other children, right? Because we still serve roles as aunts, uncles, big sisters, big brothers, whatever the case, grandparents in some of our cases, right? And so we unfortunately we have to relearn, so unlearn and relearn so we can be better moving forward. it's not like the job is already done. Even if your children are grown, you can make the choice right now to be a better parent and be more effective.
Absolutely. And it's gonna take that. Because one thing about being a parent is that once you are one, you are until, right? Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
relationship
yeah.
is going to continually develop, right? And so what does it look like for us to be able to have healthy whole relationships, no matter how old we are? Because who's still cracking codes and healing and having old conversations about childhood trauma and
Yep.
other learning our parents' stories is me, right?
Yes. Very important.
Because a lot of
Because your
those
parents are
stories
people
don't get
too.
told, right? A lot as
Yeah.
as as parents, we hold things close to our chest, right? Because our babies ain't gonna understand, or this not the
Yeah.
experience, or we don't want to expose them to that, right?
Yep.
I want you to have this version of life. But I think the goal and the point is to make sure that no matter what we expose our kids to or what they have exposure to, is that they are equipped and they are prepared to one, be able to deal with it, but also to do so with as much love and empathy as possible. Period.
For sure. For
We
sure.
gotta hold that for each other, and so gentle does not mean being passive. It means being intentional. It means having that empathy, being
Yeah.
considerate of all the things and the ways that life be life in, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
And holding space. And it means being a safe space for your kids and maybe other kids, right? And so, if your kid can't come to you with the bad news just as readily as the good, then you got some work to do. You got a little bit of work to do.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and if they should be able to talk to you about all the things.
All of
Period.
the things. All of the
All the
things.
things. So, I'm about to say I've been drinking tea this morning.
Yeah.
Yourspiritualplug.com if you need some.
H2O.
Um, but I'm a toast to the black parents that's doing the sacred work out here, that's doing the healing, even when it's messy. That's figuring out how to reparent themselves. That's making sure they hold in space for their kids. Y'all are the cycle breakers. Y'all are the legacy builders, and y'all are gonna
For
be the
sure.
examples for these other parents who ain't figured it out yet.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. And look, definitely toast to that.
if this episode made you think a little bit, reflect,
Hmm.
smile, want to text your mama, we did our part. So make
Yeah.
sure you like, follow, subscribe, tell your people to tap in next week because we are gonna be here on a regular basis.
Yeah. You stuck with us now. We family. We
Period.
family.
So
All
we'll
right.
be back.
So next time we gonna come on. Are we set on this particular next episode? Are we all right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all now then. So next time we're gonna be on here, we talking about black joy in the soft life. And like, are we actually living in abundance or are we just escaping accountability? So y'all
Mm.
gotta make sure y'all tune in to that one because we finna have some real conversations. Y'all can come and get some of this wine and spirits.
Period. I'm about to say if you see some on our social media, chop it up, talk to, have conversations with your people groups, right? Engage your friends in these conversations because they swear they not happening, but we out here.
Yeah, and so we gonna end the show with a do something today to benefit your future self. And my good old motto, meet me in the future. We'll see y'all on the next one.
Peace, y'all.